Monty, you have been so instrumental in kind of pointing me in the right direction. And
it was about looking at your character defects in spirituality.
It's the integration of clinical practices with the 12 steps.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people. He's got a lot of energy, and sometimes when you don't have so much energy, he picks you up and carries you.
Having the Monty Man there certainly helps.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here's that guy who's getting less popular minute by minute. Your host, the Multi-Man.
Welcome aboard, my friends and scallywags. It is good to have you with us here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, broadcasting, of course, from beautiful downtown Albany, Oregon, at KHLT Recovery Broadcasting Studios. I hope you're doing well. I hope that you're bringing in the newness of life every single day as we start out really the beginnings of, very early beginnings of a brand new year. It is imperative, my friends, that you continue to give away what has been so freely given to you. It is so important. And I'm not going to suggest that service work is going to keep you sober, because you can burn out on service work. Meetings won't keep you sober. You can burn out on meetings. What happens if the meeting isn't there anymore? I mean, or you can't get to it, right? What I am suggesting, though, is that a power greater than yourself can and will do that for you. The big book says he will never leave you. He will never forsake you. And I'm telling you, man, I've experienced it. I know it. I feel it, even in my limited understanding. I understand it to a degree, but I know it to be true because I've experienced it myself. And my guests, I've got 3 guests on today, and these guys are something else. They do it right. They get it. They really do. And they are one of our sponsors. The organization they represent helps to sponsor our shows. And we are so grateful for that, because without them, and a couple other folks, we wouldn't be on the air. So we have a lot of gratitude to give to these guys from Serenity Springs Recovery Center in Florida. My guest today is Jim Marshall. He is the founder of Serenity Springs, and we're going to be talking to him right after we hear this message from In the Rooms. Don't go away.
So you're sitting around waiting for the meeting, but you look at your watch and realize it doesn't start for another 3 hours, right? And you're not quite up to hanging out by yourself and feeling safe in your own head. But what can you do for 3 hours that's not self-destructive? And then you remember that thing, In the Rooms, intherooms.com. Somebody told you about it a while back, but like so many other things, you kind of pushed it to the bottom of your priority list. So here's a thought. Why not get off your blessed assurance and power up that old computer, the tablet, or smartphone, and type in www.intherooms.com. Because when you register within the Rooms, it's free. And you get access to daily meditations. You can even listen to speaker tapes. And there's daily online video AA and NA meetings and a whole bunch of good recovery stuff to help you pass the time until your meeting comes around. In fact, there are close to 300,000 members who are willing to share their experience, strength, and hope with you. So let me ask you, what are you going to do? Sit around feeling sorry for yourself? Or do the next right thing and register for free at intherooms.com, where there are literally thousands of new friends that are waiting to connect with you. intherooms.com. TakeTheVault.com. Get it. Go now.
All right, and we're back, and Jim Marshall, the founder of Serenity Springs Recovery Center in Florida, is with us. Welcome back to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Monty.
Jim, tell the listeners exactly where Serenity Springs is located in Florida, and tell them a little bit about the road into the center.
Well, it's in Edgewater, Florida, which is Volusia County, which is just south of Daytona, about 20 minutes south of Daytona, and about a half hour north of Cocoa Beach. So it's in between the two. It's on the East Coast, and today it's 75 degrees there.
Oh, so today it's nice and cool.
It's beautiful. Right? I mean, it's just a spiritual sanctuary. It's just a beautiful place to be at.
I joke about the road leading in because we were out there. Brent and myself, one of my members of my advisory board, came out for the event that you had out there, and we were joking about the road going in. It was like, wow, where is this place? You know, and then and you see all these kind of swamp-like trees, and you can imagine, snakes and alligators and that kind of thing. And the truth of the matter is, you guys really do have that stuff around there, right?
Yes, we do. That's what's so great about it. It's isolated enough where it deters people from the outside wanting to take a peek in. It also isolates the clients enough so they can get a spiritual connection with God. But we do take them out daily to the beach, to meetings, and out to eat. So they're not totally isolated, but just while they're there meditating and in the solution, they get to be on their own.
But it's really a beautiful area, folks. When you pull into the center, there's a beautiful lake there. They do canoeing. They got a golf course. You guys really picked an awesome spot. It's kind of ominous in one way, and yet very beautiful in another. And what a great balance, Jim.
God picked a spot. That's the amazing thing about it. It was supposed to be a horse farm, and then it ended up being up on an auction. And I don't want to say accidentally, but there's a miracle that we found the place when we did. 'Cause I was looking at rundown hotels and different places on Route 1, in Daytona, New Smyrna, and Edgewater, and my wife was just shaking her head saying, this isn't the place to have a rehab center. But when she saw this, she just dropped around and said, oh my God, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and that it is. Okay, so Jim, you yourself, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't struggle with alcoholism or addiction, correct?
Well, I don't struggle with it, no. But when I was 21 years old on Easter Sunday, right now, let's see, I'm 37. I'm 57 years old. I'm going to be 58 this year. And I went through a windshield, and I hit a tree, and I was intoxicated at the time. And three of my friends went through the window, but at that moment, I got on my hands and said, God, get me through this, as many people do say, and I'll never do this again. And then, of course, they do it again. I didn't. So I don't know if I'm an addict. I don't want to find out.
Right.
My grandfather was an addict. My son's an addict. There's a very good chance I'm an addict, but I don't want to know about it. That's why I live the 12 steps. I believe in the 12 steps. And you don't have to be an addict to live the 12 steps. That's the beautiful thing about it.
That is, you can apply and implement the spiritual principles found in the 12 steps in your life, because really, would you agree with me that in reality there are no normies?
Yes, completely. And when you say like an addict, I was addicted to arresting people, if that makes any sense to anyone. And many other narcotics officers can relate to that. I would have my kids in the car, and I would chase somebody that had drugs on them. That's how bad my addiction was, to arresting people, thinking that's going to solve the drug problem, thinking that's going to solve the problem of addiction, and that is not the way to solve it. It's definitely not a crime. It's a disease.
And that's what's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Listeners, Jim was a law enforcement officer on narcotics squad, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an anti-crime unit.
Right.
I got to work with DEA. I got to work with the state police in New Jersey. I got to work with the FBI. And I was misinformed by the doctors back then about what addiction is. I was told that if 100 people, this is a DEA school, I was misled to believe that if 100 people consume cocaine, if 100 people consume heroin, whatever their drug of choice is what's on that table, 100 people will be addicted. And that's not the truth. The truth is 10% cannot stop. And that's the true addict.
Right.
And that's who we want to treat.
Yeah, yeah. And so for so many years, we really qualified people in the early days of the 12-step movement, and then we kind of got away from that, and everybody and anybody was coming in the rooms. And I'm not saying that that's a mistake. I just have to wonder sometimes if we need to be more about the business of sitting down with each individual person and finding out what is really going on. True?
Yes, many people think if they got a DWI, 2 DWIs, even 3 DWIs, driving while intoxicated, they think that they're an addict right away. They think they're an alcoholic. That is so far from the truth. It's so far. It's a very complex disease.
Yeah.
You have to let a professional really analyze it and find out, are you in fact an addict? Now, if you're not an addict and you do the 12 steps, it works. If you are an addict and you do the 12 steps, it works. So sometimes it doesn't matter, but the problem in the rooms is this. You have someone chairing a meeting that is not an addict.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't went through the 12 steps. They have a year sober, 2 years sober. Some people, I met a guy that was 5 years sober, chairing a meeting that had not been through the steps, telling other people how to get sober. That's the scary thing out there. That is the scariest. One guy was saying, well, if you smoke some pot, that's what helped me. That got me through it. And I just shake my head, and I always have to say something. That's not if it's a problem or it's a good thing, but I always have to voice my opinion. So, 'cause that's what's killing people.
Yeah.
Someone chairing a meeting, giving advice like that, saying just don't use drugs today and you're going to be fine. Just keep coming back to these meetings, and that's what's killing people, because the guy sitting in the back of the room saying, oh my gosh, nobody feels what I'm feeling. Everybody in this room, they're just not using, and that's what's getting them better. I just can't use. Next thing you know, he's using. Now he thinks there's something wrong with him. Where he's completely normal, because that's what an addict's supposed to do. And that's what we teach at Serenity Springs, is that's what you're supposed to do. We teach you how not to do that through God.
And you know what's really great about this is that, like you said, you have to speak up. So, and that's something you and I have in common. Somebody told me one time that I had to just shut up and go start a radio station or something. So I did. I said, okay, you're not going to let me talk about it in here? Well, we'll just talk about it internationally over the airwaves. How about that? You know, and you did something remarkable too. You didn't just put up with this. You founded this wonderful facility, Serenity Springs Recovery Center. You know, and you have them. And when we were there, you had, I'm not sure how many beds, but you have 10 beds now, right?
Yes, 10 beds. And we have an outpatient program as well.
Yes, and I'm so excited about that. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, the outpatient program we're going to try to teach the exact same thing that we're teaching in the facility, but on a 3-day-a-week basis. I believe it's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And we're just going to go bigger and bigger and bigger on that. Because when you go to so many therapists, so many doctors, they have no training on addiction. And yet they're trying to cure somebody from an addiction through people, places, things, triggers. And that's fine for someone that's not an addict. But if you're an addict, triggers, people, places, things don't matter. When you're an addict in recovery, triggers, people, places, things don't matter. And only someone that's been through the steps would understand what I'm saying. And it's so misleading when you get a therapist trying to teach someone that's a true addict. They're yelling at them, they're screaming at them, because they can't get sober. And they don't understand that they're an addict to the real deal. They got to go through these steps. They got to have a spiritual awakening. And that's what we're going to teach at our outpatient program.
Excellent stuff. Now you said a key word here. You said through God. We know that in many of today's 12-step support meetings, and I say that to separate the 12-step program, the literature, because they can be two very different things. They tell us to get a higher power, and then when we get one, they won't let us talk about them. But at Serenity Springs, you can talk about them, right?
Yes. And that is so annoying when I go to a meeting and someone says, now, maybe your doorknob's your higher power. Maybe that book's your higher power. As soon as someone starts saying, say, shut up, God's your higher power. We have people of numerous different faiths, from Jewish to Muslim to atheist to agnostic, come through our center, and they all thank God afterwards that they got better. You're not going to get better. You got to say the word God. God's out there. God's inside everyone, but you can't be afraid to say it, and that's the problem today.
Right. Because
as it actually was way back in the day, because they actually changed the book several times because it was offending Christians. It was offending godly people. Because many people even think today that come into the center that, well, God would never do that to me. God wouldn't punish me like that. And we take them through the steps, and then they get an understanding. You know, some people are allergic to penicillin. Some people are allergic to poison ivy. Some people aren't. Some people are allergic to peanuts. Some people aren't. And everybody's body's different. And once you start to understand that God didn't do anything bad to you, actually it's a good thing many times when someone has this addiction, because it gets to take you through the 12 steps. Then you have a whole different meaning of life, a better feeling about life. And some people, it's actually a blessing, and they've told me, I'm glad I'm an addict because it's completely changed my life for the better.
That's right. God, boy, that was so well said. So well said. And I can tell in your voice that you're passionate about this. And I know one of the reasons you're passionate about this, because we're running out of time, and I want to make sure the listeners get this, because we're going to have your son on here next. One of the reasons you're passionate about this is this didn't just hit home with you because you had a car accident or something like that and you were concerned about Jim. This hit home with you because it touched another member of your family, and you and he worked together to produce this wonderful center, Serenity Springs Recovery Center. Tell us about Jimmy.
Yes, it was my son. My son, while he was in college, we realized that he had the disease of addiction. And he went from being an honor student at a university in New Jersey, who was on the cover shaking the dean's hand for being one of the highest academic students of the year at the school. He had an academic scholarship. He was homecoming king. He was captain of the football team, all-state golfer. And then he realized he had this disease where he couldn't stop. I took him to his first meeting. And my wife yelling at me saying, you know, these meetings don't work for everybody. He needs professional help. So we were bringing him to doctors. Then doctors started giving him Xanax. Then he had an even bigger problem.
Poor guy.
It wasn't until we realized that the 12 steps is the real deal. That's what works. God's got to intervene, and that's why we opened Serenity Springs Recovery Center. And also one of the other people that helped found this place with me, Joe Adabai, who's the CEO of the company, Serenity Springs. His son also had a problem with alcohol. And,
right. Right.
That's when we realized that God works in very strange ways, and he actually gave me a large sum of money without even seeing the place, knowing what I went through and what he went through, and you could see the passion in my voice that this was going to work, that this was going to be a great place. And that's the amazing thing about it. I expected maybe a 40 or 50% recovery rate. Right now we're in the 80 percentile recovery rate. And even people that did relapse, we either send them to Kerrville or we send them to Origins, or they come back to our facility, and everybody wants to get better. Even if they do relapse, they still have that 12-step in their heart, and they realize that's what they got to do to get better. And I just love it. I get very excited about it. I just got off the phone with a parent about 20 minutes ago, and she was so distraught. And all these treatment centers are telling her about the therapy that they have and how great we have great therapists. Don't get me wrong. We do the EMDR there. We have great doctors there. But they all believe, like I believe, that's the 12 steps and it's God that gets you better. When you have a therapist saying that, and you have a doctor saying that, and advocates saying that, that's when it's really strong, and that's when you're going to have really strong recovery.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and talk about Serenity Springs again. And, of course, we'll have you guys back on again and interview some more clients. We've got one of your alumni coming on the show here very soon, talking about what Serenity Springs did for them. Thank you so much for your work, my friend. It is such a blessing.
Monty.
Absolutely. Stay on the line, Jim. Okay, folks, next up is Jimmy Marshall. And let me ask you, Jim, real quick. Jimmy is Jimmy Marshall III, right? Yes.
I'm James Marshall Jr. My father's James John Marshall. I'm James John Marshall Jr. He's actually James John Marshall III.
The third.
Usually they call him Jimmy and they call me Jim. That way it doesn't get confusing.
Right. So we're going to be listening to Jimmy share a little bit about his involvement with Serenity Springs when we come back. So, folks, don't go away. This is really cool stuff. More when we return.
Origins Recovery Centers provides integrated inpatient treatment for substance abuse and co-occurring disorders. At Origins, clients receive expert medical, clinical, and spiritual care individually designed for their needs. Our clients leave Origins with the foundation upon which they will build the rest of their lives. Call now to speak with an admissions specialist. Our toll-free number is 888-843-8935. That's 888-843-8935. Origins, delivering real solutions for real families.
Hi, this is Laura C., and you've tuned in to Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, the home of recovery, talk radio, and positive music.
All right, and we have returned, and as promised, Jimmy Marshall III. We just spoke to Jimmy Marshall Jr. Jimmy Marshall III is a owner and COO and a founder of Serenity Springs Recovery Center in beautiful Edgewater, Florida. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you very much, Monty. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm happy I get to talk to you again.
You and your dad and the Joes and Chrissy, you guys are some of my most favorite people. You really are. And it's amazing. You can say what you want to about the internet, but it's amazing how people can become friends and interact with each other because of the World Wide Web. And I'm so grateful to be linked up with you guys. And, of course, you guys sponsor some of our shows here at Take 12 Radio.
Thanks, Mike. It's a real blessing to be a part of your life too. And I always enjoy being able to get on the show with you, and I look forward to the next time I get to see you in person.
Yeah, me too.
Now the internet's good.
Me too, buddy. You get really good hugs, man. You and your dad are just such a positive influence. But things weren't always that way with you. I mean, okay, so we know that you were like, what, Mr. Football, right? As far as your grades go, you were right up there, man. People were taking pictures with you and some pretty powerful people, and it all came crashing down. What happened?
Yeah, My disease progressed very slowly. Growing up, I thought I was just someone that enjoyed having a good time. I drank a lot. My drug of choice was alcohol for many years, and I drank very heavily on the weekends and when I could get away with it on weekdays. But I did very well in school. I did very well in sports. I was always on the honor roll. I was doing well in college, and then in my very last year of college, I sensed something was wrong, and it was definitely I started introducing other drugs, and I started drinking more and more, and really the crap it hit the fan. And in my very last semester of college, I was going to be graduating with honors. I was about 8 weeks away from that. And I went away for a spring break that really it never ended. It was the first time in my life I became a daily user, and I never went back to a single class. And instead of graduating with honors, I failed out of school that semester. And from then on, once I had crossed that line, it was I didn't know what had happened, and I couldn't fix it. I didn't know how to fix it.
Okay, what is that line you're talking about? Let the listeners know what you're talking about.
The line I'm talking about is where I felt all of a sudden I really wanted to stop. I wanted to regain control, or the little control in retrospect that I did have. I wanted to go back to that time in my life, and I just couldn't. I kept telling myself, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna stop drinking. I'm gonna stop using drugs for good. And around that same time, I started ended up in the hospital. A few years later, I was arrested for the first time. I'd end up in motel rooms, but all by myself, and sleeping in the woods. And and every single time I would tell myself, okay, that's it. And for the first time in my life, I felt complete powerlessness.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but I was really experiencing that step one where I had no power, choice, or control over what I was doing.
Sleeping in the woods. Yeah, how's that working for you? Right.
Sleeping in the woods. Yeah, that's those are some stories that the people close to me always like me to tell. Is in multiple different states too, where I go through periods of being sober.
Yeah.
And one time I was in sober living, living in Austin, Texas, working a Half Measures program, and when I was just about to have my 90 days sober, I ended up, taking that first drink, and I ended up in the woods and sleeping in poison ivy a few days later.
I'm sorry for laughing, buddy, but
yeah,
I'm laughing because I identify. I never woke up in poison ivy, but I woke it up in some pretty poisonous situations.
Yeah.
One of the things I used to do, Jimmy, and this isn't about me, but I got to share this. I would drive. For hours. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I woke up in Flagstaff, Arizona. Things like that. Just bizarre stuff. Okay, so
those lapses, those big lapses in time.
Yeah,
they're time travel, and all of a sudden I'm somewhere else.
Yep.
And it's like, what happened? I said I was going to stop. I wasn't going to do this again.
Right. There is such thing as a time machine. It's called addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you really got things were going not well. Your dad's a law enforcement officer, for crying out loud. I mean, what drug enforcement guy, right?
Yes, yeah, and I grew up around the mentality of, and I had that mentality of, in my head, is drugs are awful. People that smoke pot, people that do cocaine, people that do heroin are lowlights. And here I was with my vodka and my Everclear. Later those drugs came into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up with that mentality of, alcohol is different than drugs. I realized that it's the same exact thing now, and just different people have different drugs of choice. But I grew up with that mentality of that the war on drugs. It should be a war on drugs.
Yeah, I hear you. So, okay, so your dad takes you to your first meeting, true?
True.
Yeah.
My dad took me to my first meeting. I believe I was 24 years old.
Okay.
He took me to my first meeting, and I was piss drunk at it. And I stood up and said, I had the liquid courage in me. I stood up, said my name, said I was an alcoholic. I really didn't know what that meant, though.
Yeah.
At the time, I just thought it meant that I drank a lot and I needed to stop. And I remember that as vividly as I can, for as intoxicated as I was.
Right. And here, folks, I got to tell you, here's the All-American kid. You know, I mean, the grades are up there. There's people, Jimmy, that really believe that this stuff can't touch them because everything's going great for them. And here you had the same situation, and bam! I mean, it was a slow progression, but when you cross that line, you really cross that line. So let me ask you this. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, and that's especially I found it with alcohol, my experience with recovery and my personal recovery, and then my experience professionally, is that it can really disguise, the disease can disguise itself as with successes, external things that are going on, with a good relationship, with a good job, with doing good in school.
Sure.
And the disease is very quietly progressing until, like it happened for me, I crossed that line, I wanted to stop, and I couldn't, and stuff just, it went from being okay to just being absolutely miserable.
So let me ask you this. You did this thing, you went through the 12-step process, you learned how to apply and implement the spiritual principles found in those steps. You even recognize that there's no power in the steps. They're there to show you your need for a power. You turned your will and your life over to that power, and then something happened. You decided to give this thing away. What happened? How'd you get into this Serenity Springs thing?
Well, I saw that treatment. I've been to a few different treatment centers and multiple detoxes, and most of them similar to psych wards. And I just saw that, once I was given the solution of God, and the solution of I have to get completely honest, and, my problem is myself. And, I went to meetings for a number of years hearing that the drugs and the alcohol, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I can stop using the drugs and alcohol, everything was going to be okay. And I went to treatment centers that told me that too. And detoxes that told me that, okay, well, and I had counselors that went along with me, and I would tell them, okay, I really learned my lesson this time, and that's it. And I was never really explained step one. I'd leave this place in the same condition, really the same condition that I went in, and I just saw that, it was given to me, and there's a need for it, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to help people. I wanted to give people what I had gotten.
But going from just, and I don't want to minimize service work. I don't want to do that. But going from, opening the rooms to pouring coffee to being, a service member for the district in a 12-step program or whatever, to being the COO of a treatment center, really a recovery center, on some of the most beautiful property in the world, that's quite a jump, Jimmy.
It is, but it fits so well. And one thing that I always remind myself, and that was told to me, is my personal recovery, I can't rely on my work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a blessing. It's an absolute blessing that this is what I get to do for a living, and I get to see people in an accelerated program of the 12 steps, and I get to see that change happen so fast. But and I right now I sponsor 4 guys. I have a sponsor, and it's all part of my life, and it's just such a I every day just overwhelmed with gratitude, and I look at, like you said, I mean, it is such a beautiful, awe-inspiring campus. And to see people come in so broken,
mm-hmm.
and have absolutely no idea how to get well, and some of them with almost zero hope that, they've been to other treatment centers, that it's not going to work for them, and to see the light come on in people's eyes, it's just, I can't say it enough. It's a blessing. It's a blessing, and that's what I'm so grateful for.
And you said something very key, that the work you do at Serenity Springs Recovery Center is not the thing that is going to maintain your quality of sanity, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
No, I always tell people that it doesn't hurt. It definitely doesn't hurt.
Right.
You know, almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My life revolves around the big book, recovery, and God. But you know, I can't stay sober on helping people when money is involved.
Right, and the bottom line is
fun and for free.
The bottom line is the real issue is our separation from our Creator, and you guys address that so well. That's when I say they do it right. Whenever I say that about a place, whether it's a medical institution or whether it's a treatment center or a recovery center, people know when I say they do it right that means that you guys focus on what the real problem is, and we've heard Chris Schroeder talk about it a million times. You can't come up with the real solution unless you know what the real problem is, and the real problem is not the substance; it's lack of substance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now when we were out there, you guys had not expanded to 10 beds. You're now at 10 beds, all male facility, correct?
Yes, correct. When you were there, we had a 6-bed capacity, and we were rezoned. And now we treat 10 people at a time.
And you have an outpatient program now.
Yes. Our outpatient program is located in New Smyrna Beach. Our residential treatment center is in Edgewater, Florida.
Right.
We're about 10 miles apart from each other, and our outpatient facility, it's a blessing now because now we can treat females also. Our outpatient facility accepts males and females, and you know, we concentrate on the people that either, you know, they can't afford residential treatment or don't have the time to go into residential treatment. And maybe they aren't, their disease isn't quite as progressed yet that they truly need residential treatment, and maybe the intensive outpatient program will work. And especially because, you know, there's so many outpatient programs out there, similar to there's so many residential programs out there.
Mm-hmm.
But our outpatient program, like our residential program, is solution-based. You know, we base it on realizing that, like you said, and like from Chris Schroeder, that the problem is the addict himself or herself. It's not the substance, and that's, we have to get down to causes and conditions and fix that.
And in fact, your outpatient program is called Solution of Serenity. Is that correct?
Solution of Serenity.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, okay, how many clients do you have outpatient currently? Do you know?
Currently, we have, I believe we have six patients right now. Yeah, we've been, we hope to have 10 in our night program and 10 in our day program. But right now we've officially been open for a little over 30 days.
Wow.
But we've grown. You know, the first group was one client, and now 30 days later there's 6.
Yeah.
And we hope in another 30 days we'll have 20.
Man, you guys are busy folks. So how far? That's what? How many miles away from the outpatient program is the inpatient program? About 12 miles or so?
About exactly 10 miles apart.
Okay.
And we also have 2 sober living houses now, both located in New Smyrna, and they're each only about a mile from our outpatient facility.
2 sober living houses, an inpatient facility, a campus, and an outpatient program. Wow.
Yeah.
Never in your
I can't believe it. Where I've been, you know, like we talked about before, from waking up covered in poison ivy, because that was my pillow the night before, to having all this and helping so many people now. You know, I was going through a list of people. We've been open a little over a year and a half now, and our residential program, and going through that list of all the people that are just doing exceptionally well now.
Mm-hmm.
We feel so good inside.
What do you think is attributed to that, to the high success rate? Do you think it's because of the spiritual focus?
The spiritual focus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And one thing that, and because it's spiritual focused and because it's so intimate and small,
yeah,
like every client gets so much individual care, and no one slips through the cracks. So we're solution based, and we have such a small number of clients compared to the amount of staff that we have. Everyone just gets such individualized treatment. They get pretty much their hands held and walk through the steps and find God.
Yeah. Wow. And our mutual friend Mark Gibson works for you guys, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mark Gibson is our newest employee. He's been a blessing to have here. Someone that does the deal himself and is solution based, and he's our director of operations now.
And folks, in case you didn't know, Serenity Springs Recovery Center is really a sister group sprung from Origins, and I mean you guys focus on much of the same stuff, correct?
Exactly. That's where I got well.
Yeah.
That's where Mark Gibson got well. So I took their program, and we do it on just a smaller scale as far as the amount of clients that we treat at a time, and I owe my life to God in that program. So
you bet.
I always want to give them credit. Origins is a wonderful, wonderful place and a wonderful program.
And folks may be scratching their heads, where have I heard of Origins? Well, if you watch Dr. Phil, you've heard of Origins. You've met Ben Levinson and the gang. And again, another place that does it right. So congratulations on your outpatient thing, man, and your added beds and the ability to treat so many people. Somebody told me that your pet alligator has gone missing.
Yes, he has. We had a 4-foot alligator that turned into a 5-foot alligator after about a year, and now we don't know where he went to.
Have you checked the client's bedrooms?
Yeah. Hopefully he's not hiding somewhere he shouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much, man, for coming on and giving us an update about Serenity Springs.
Thanks, Monty. God bless you.
Absolutely. Don't hang up. Folks, next up is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for Serenity Springs. Joe Adavai is going to be joining us to wrap up this hour. Folks, don't go away. More when we return. Hey there. This is the Monty Man from Take 12 Recovery Radio, and I am proud to introduce to you a new, fully licensed, all-male residential treatment facility located on the beautiful east coast of Florida. Serenity Springs Recovery Center is a 10-acre spiritual sanctuary fostered through an intensive 12-step foundation of recovery. Addiction is a disease that deteriorates the body, punishes the mind, and destroys the spirit. It needs to be attacked on all 3 of these fronts, and Serenity Springs does just that. A unique facility that is committed to providing exceptional individual care in small group settings while utilizing their experienced and dedicated clinical and support staff of licensed therapists and doctors. 30, 60, and 90-day individualized treatment programs are available. Call 386-423-4540 or visit their website at serenityspringsrecovery.com. That's 386-423-4540. Serenity Springs, making a life-changing investment into your recovery. All right, and we have returned. And by the way, Serenity Springs now has 10 beds. When we visited them before, I think there was 6. We just spoke with Jim Marshall Jr. and then Jimmy Marshall III, both founders, COO. And now we have the pleasure of closing out our show this hour with Joe Adavai. He is the CEO of Serenity Springs Recovery Center. Joe, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Monty. Glad to be here.
And you're talking from the parking lot of Walmart in Milltown, New Jersey.
Actually, it's the Home Depot, but there's a Target right across the street.
Okay.
So
Home Depot. That's right. I Walmart and Home Depot, of course, are paying us so much money to promote them, right? You have something very much in common with Jim Jr. and Jimmy Marshall III, because you're the CEO of Serenity Springs, and your son is also somebody who's been through the recovery process, correct?
yes, my son was through the recovery process, myself as well. We weren't in Serenity Springs, but we both came to just the knowledge of God and his son Jesus, and we know that it's a spiritual awakening that is what's needed for recovery from addiction.
Do you feel like some of the 12-step support meetings have gotten kind of watered down and they're more man-centered than God-centered, or do you think we're kind of springing back and being more God-centered again?
Well, I think because of people like you and because of what we're doing at Serenity Springs, we're springing back.
Good.
I had the pleasure of hearing Chris Schroeder speak at our seminar this past summer, and just to hear speakers like him who are emphasizing the fact that God is really the healer. He's the one that we really need. Of course, we need to go through the steps and we need certain behaviors to change, but ultimately we need a spiritual change because behavior doesn't make a miracle. God does.
Right, right.
And it's a miracle to come off addiction, just knowing the miracle I had in my own life. And we're at Serenity Springs, we see miracles all the time.
So in your case, I mean, with Jim Jr. and Jimmy the Third, Jim Jr. was a law enforcement officer, and Jimmy, his son, was the all-American kid, and the disease progressed slowly, but took him out. And thank God now he's serving his fellow man, serving God, and doing great. But you and your son both have been through struggles with addictive substances, correct?
Correct.
So
yes, it was.
What brought you out of it?
Well, I have a long story, but when I was 27, I was about to commit suicide, and my brother, who had been a physicist, had become a Christian, my older brother, and he had given me the Bible. So basically, one night when I was about to take my life from extensive cocaine abuse, I picked up the Bible and started reading it. And I met God for the first time, and that was the beginning of my recovery.
Yeah, yeah. And don't you have some pastorship experience in your background?
Yeah, I am a pastor.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I pastor a church in North Brunswick called Grace Church, and as a matter of fact, some of our parishioners have actually gone to Serenity Springs and been healed. So,
yeah,
I know firsthand how well we're doing.
Yeah, you bet. And your son is clean and or sober, however people want to say it. I just say he's healthy, alive and well, and doing well. And where does he live?
He lives with me now, and he went through a really tough time. He got to a point where he just could not handle alcohol in any way, shape, or form, and one night took all his anger out on himself and put a knife in his gut.
Ooh.
I literally held him in my arms and just said, God, please, please, just save him. And it was a little while after that we sent him off, and he went to California, and he went on a missions trip out there, and he met God, and he came back totally changed.
Wow.
That was before we had the rehab. If we had the rehab, I would have sent him to rehab.
Okay, so, and congratulations on both of you for your life being turned around by the power of God. I mean, just what a testimony to the power and love and the grace and mercy of our Creator. That's marvelous. So how does somebody end up a CEO of a treatment facility?
Well, at the same time this was going on, Monty, I was in contact with Jim Marshall. He was one of our parishioners, just a great guy. He had been through a lot, and I went through it with him. And on occasion, tried to help him with his son, but there was nothing we could do. And then, of course, he sent him to different rehabs. And finally, there was a breakthrough in Jimmy Jr., and we saw the change in him. And Jimmy said, wow, this is something that I should be doing. He found a calling in his life. He was a successful businessman. He had a pizzeria. He had a landscaping business. But he was willing to throw that all away to help people get sober. And he just caught my ear with that vision, because I'm always behind people's visions. And so we started to form a sort of a just pastor-parishioner sort of partnership, that I would pray for him, that he would find the right place, and that it would all work out for him.
And to your credit, and I know you were guided by the power of God's Spirit to do this, but you just wrote him a check, kind of sight unseen, right?
Well, he came to me one day and said, Pastor Joe, I know this is it. I found the right place, and I saw it, and I really believed, especially since the place had been, at one time, it was going to be a women's shelter. And when he showed it to me, I just felt like, wow, this is it. And he was willing to give up everything for this. I mean, when you see somebody with that kind of drive to do something, you know that they mean it.
Yeah, and to give up everything to follow the call of God to do something like this is something else. And congratulations. You guys now have, and we talked about this earlier during the show, you now have an outpatient program going on as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I'll tell you, Monty, that Jimmy Jr. is just fantastic. I mean, he was an All-American boy who, couldn't handle certain drugs and alcohol, but now he's rehab dynamite, that kid. I mean, he's just fantastic.
Yeah, he's something else. He really is something else. Well, you guys, one of the things that I recognized right away when we came to visit and cover the event out there was it was evident to me. It was evident to Brent, one of my board members, the amount of love and personal attention that the guys get there. And we've talked about this before. It's a small center. I mean, there's 10 beds, but one of the blessings is that they get this personal connection with you guys. And so many treatment centers, and I'm not poo-pooing treatment centers that are large. I get it. But this is such a cool deal. I mean, you guys got a pretty high success rate, true?
Yes. I mean, I don't know anybody that's gone through that isn't become a member of our extended family. And I've had many of the guys come and visit me here at our church up here just to say hello. And every time I go every couple of months to speak. And the reason I'm called CEO is because I'm the chief encouragement officer. But I go down and just encourage the guys and speak to them about hope and how addiction isn't the end; it's the beginning. When we recover fully, and God has a great plan for our lives. And Jimmy and every one of our staff, really, once you meet them, you become family. It's never like, okay, you're out of the center and you're out of our lives. You're always in our lives.
Right. Yeah, and I'm really impressed by that. The aftercare and the continuum of care, and just the bond you create with them. And in talking, we've been putting together some new promotional pieces for 2014. And just in talking with the guys, I mean, it just melts your heart, man. I'm so proud of what you guys are doing. It means so very much. And to be associated with Serenity Springs, you're some of our favorite folks, my friend. You really, really are. please tell your son a big hello and give him a great big hug for me. I connected with him right away.
Yeah, I saw that. He mentioned it as well.
Yeah. So I want to get him. And listeners, we're going to have Joe Jr. on the show this year, sometime this year. I really want to get him on for a full show and do his story, because it's amazing. Well, Joe, what are your plans? I mean, where's Serenity Springs going from here? I mean, you've got 10 beds. You've got an outpatient program that includes women as well in the outpatient program. What are some of the goals and the dreams for the future?
Well, first of all, Jimmy and Jim, they're the visionaries for this, and I'm behind their vision, and we talk, and they want to keep it. They don't want it to get too big where it'll never be personal,
right?
Like you said, and I know those guys, and they won't allow that. And just to continue to improve our treatment and how we react with people, and to make it available and affordable for everyone, and just to continue to be a blessing to everyone we can be. And just to keep it always real, like you were saying, Monty, where it's really about people getting better. Because if that's not it, then what is it? And that's why I really love the Marshall family, because they are for people getting better. And we're seeing it, and it's just awesome to be a part of.
Yeah.
Well, I'd also like to mention Sharon Marshall, the wife and mom, who's really the one, the real strength behind the scenes. So I just wanted to mention her.
Well, absolutely. And so many times the wives and the moms don't get enough credit. Sometimes I think that those sobriety coins ought to go to the women folk.
Exactly. And of course, Jim's mom and dad, they have been such an encouragement and so supportive. But it's just awesome to be a part of it, and just to see people get healed. Real quick, I was at a recent alumni meeting where they had a meeting of alumni, and there had to be 40 people there just to show you how family we are. And there was a guy there that came to Serenity Springs not for alcohol or drugs, but for anger.
Wow.
And he sat there at that meeting, and he said, before I came here, I have to admit I didn't believe in God. And he said, you came here and talked about God. He was talking about me, which kind of shocked me. And he said, I have to tell you, when I left here a couple weeks ago, I realized that God loves me, and I didn't have to be angry anymore.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, there wasn't a dry eye around there, because
wow,
he was pretty angry, He got healed through Serenity Springs, and that was pretty awesome.
Well, that's amazing, my friend, because really the bottom line, the main issue here, the main thing that's the main thing is our separation from God, and that's why our lives are spiritually unmanageable, is because we've been separated from our Creator way too long. And when that happens, when that reunion happens between God and man, amazing things take place. And I just congratulate you guys once again for doing it right. You guys really do. Thank you, Joe, so much for taking this few minutes to come on the show and give us an update. I appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, Monty, thank you. Hey, Monty, you have a calling to preach,
I do. Yeah, I've had several people tell me that. I don't know. Can you become a preacher at 58 years of age? I suppose so.
Well, actually, you know what? You are preaching on the radio.
Yeah, well, that's true. And people have told me to stop preaching, and I tell them, well, that's not going to happen. All right, Joe. Many thanks to my guest this week, Joe Adebayo, the CEO of Serenity Springs, and Jimmy Marshall III and Jim Marshall. This has been a great show. Folks, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man, and I'm wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
kitty, 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 kitty.